I told my son that he was a mistake, a product of said I wish I would have aborted him, and add, my name is Patricia. I'm 38 years old and a single mother of two wonderful children, Jason, who's 17, and Emma, who's 15. Last month, I said something unforgivable to my son during an argument, words so cruel, they've created a chasm between us. I don't know how to cross. He won't speak to me now, despite my desperate attempts to apologize and make things right. The guilt is eating me alive as I watch him slip away. If you've ever said something in anger you deeply regretted, please let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe as I share the worst mistake of my life. Growing up, I never imagined my life would turn out this way. I was raised in a small town outside of Seattle with dreams of becoming a journalist. I was 20 and in my second year of college when my life changed forever. What should have been an ordinary night out with friends ended in the worst way possible. I was sexually assaulted by someone I thought I could trust, a guy from my journalism class who had offered to walk me back to my dorm. I remember the weeks afterward as a blur of police reports, medical exams, and counseling sessions. When I discovered I was pregnant 6 weeks later, my world splintered even further. My parents, conservative and deeply religious, immediately pushed me to consider adoption or abortion. They couldn't bear the thought of their daughter raising a child conceived through such violence, worried about what people would say, how it would affect my future. "You're too young, Patricia," my mother said. "How will you finish school? How will you support a child on your own?" Their concerns were valid, but something inside me couldn't go through with an abortion. Despite the horrific circumstances, the baby growing inside me was an innocent part of me. After many sleepless nights and long conversations with my therapist, I made the decision to keep my baby. Jason was born on a rainy April morning. The moment the nurse placed him in my arms, I felt an overwhelming surge of love. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I promised him then that I would give him the best life possible, that I would never let the circumstances of his conception define who he was or how much I loved him. Those early years were incredibly difficult. I dropped out of college, moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment, and worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. My parents, though, disappointed in my decision, eventually came around and helped when they could. Jason was a quiet baby, serious and observant, with thoughtful eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. When Jason was 3, I met David at the bookstore where I worked part-time. He was kind, patient, and fell in love with both Jason and me. After a year of dating, we got married, and for the first time, I felt like maybe I could have the family I always dreamed of. David was good to Jason, taking him fishing and teaching him to ride a bike, all the things I had worried my son would miss without a father. 2 years into our marriage, Emma was born. She came into the world loud and demanding the complete opposite of her brother. While Jason had been content to play quietly by himself, Emma wanted everyone's attention all the time. From the beginning, she had David wrapped around her little finger. After all, she was his biological child, the spitting image of him with her bright blue eyes and dimpled smile. I noticed the differences in how David treated the children, subtle at first, but growing more apparent as the years passed. He was more patient with Emma's tantrums, more quick to praise her accomplishments, more likely to bend the rules for her. With Jason, he was fair but firmer, quicker to discipline, slower to show physical affection. I worked hard to compensate, making sure Jason knew how much I loved him, how proud I was of everything he accomplished. I tried to speak with David about the disparity in his treatment, but he would get defensive, insisting he loved both children equally. Perhaps he truly believed he did, but actions speak louder than words, especially to an observant child like Jason. As Jason entered his teenage years, he became more withdrawn, spending hours in his room studying or reading. He excelled academically consistently, bringing home perfect report cards. I attended every school event, cheered at his debate competitions, and celebrated each achievement. But I could feel him pulling away, building walls I couldn't seem to break through. Emma, meanwhile, struggled in school but thrived socially. She was the girl everyone wanted to be friends with, constantly surrounded by peers. Her grades suffered due to her disinterest in academics, and I spent countless hours trying to help her study, arranging tutoring, and meeting with teachers. After David and I divorced when Jason was 12 and Emma 10, the burden of parenting fell entirely on my shoulders. The real estate career I had built allowed me to support us financially, but the demands of being a successful agent meant long hours and weekend work. I relied heavily on Jason to help around the house and look after his sister, responsibilities he accepted without complaint, though I knew it wasn't fair to place them on him. The 3 years leading up to our devastating argument were marked by increasing tension. Jason grew more serious about his future, focused intently on college applications and maintaining his perfect GPA. Emma entered her rebellious phase, early testing boundaries at every turn. I found myself constantly playing referee between them while trying to keep our household running and food on the table. Looking back, I can see how the pressure was building in all of us. I was exhausted, stretched thin between work responsibilities and parenting. Jason was shouldering the weight of his academic goals, plus household responsibilities I shouldn't have placed on him. And Emma was acting out, perhaps seeking the attention her busy mother and focused brother couldn't always provide. We were a family held together by fraying threads, and it would take just one bad day for everything to unravel completely. The day that changed everything started like many others. I woke up at 5:30, prepared for a crucial meeting with clients interested in purchasing a luxury property, the kind of sale that could secure our financial stability for months. I made breakfast for the kids, reminded them to clean the house while I was gone, and rushed out the door with my travel mug of coffee. The meeting went terribly. The clients, a wealthy couple from California, decided at the last minute they wanted to look at properties in a different area entirely, one outside my jurisdiction. Just like that, weeks of preparation and the substantial commission I had been counting on disappeared. My boss was understanding, but disappointed, and I couldn't help but internalize that disappointment. Traffic was unusually heavy on the drive home, extending my commute by nearly an hour. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my head was pounding and my patience worn thin. All I wanted was to take a hot shower, change into comfortable clothes, and maybe order takeout for dinner. A clean, quiet house and cooperative children seemed like a reasonable expectation after the day I'd had. What greeted me instead was a living room littered with Emma's school supplies, dishes piled in the sink, and the distinct smell of something burned in the kitchen. Jason sat at the dining table, textbooks spread around him, completely absorbed in his SAT prep materials. He barely looked up when I entered, offering only a distracted, "Hey, Mom." "Jason, what happened to cleaning the house today?" I asked, setting my purse down harder than necessary. "And where's your sister? Wasn't she supposed to be home doing her makeup work for algebra?" Jason finally looked up, his expression a mixture of annoyance and guilt. "I've been studying all day. I can't afford to mess up these practice tests if I want to get into Columbia. And Emma left about 2 hours ago with Mackenzie. Said something about a study group." "A study group?" I echoed, knowing full well Emma had been grounded after her last algebra test came back with a D-. "She's supposed to be grounded, and she knows it. Why didn't you stop her?" "I'm not her keeper," Jason replied, turning back to his books. "Maybe if you enforced your rules with her the same way you do with me, she'd actually listen. But Emma gets away with everything." His dismissive tone ignited something in me. After the day I'd had being challenged by my 17-year-old son was the last thing I needed. "Excuse me, I've had a horrible day, lost a massive commission, and come home to a mess you were supposed to clean up. I don't need attitude from you right now." Jason closed his book with a controlled motion that somehow conveyed more anger than if he'd slammed it. It's always about what you need, isn't it? You need a clean house. You need quiet for your calls. You need me to watch Emma. What about what I need? I have the most important tests of my life coming up, but somehow, that's less important than Emma's social life or your job. That's not fair, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Everything I do, every commission I chase, every hour I work is for you and your sister. So we can afford college, so we can keep this house, so you can have the opportunities I never had. Right, Jason said with a bitter laugh. That's why Emma gets a new phone when she breaks hers, but I've had the same laptop for 4 years. That's why you attend all of Emma's soccer games but missed my debate championship. That's why Emma can break rules without consequences, but I'm expected to be perfect all the time. Each accusation felt like a slap. Was that really how he saw things? Had I truly been so blind to the favoritism he perceived? Jason, that's not true. I treat you both the same. No, you don't. His voice cracked with emotion. You never have Dad favored Emma because she's his biological kid, and I understood that even if it hurt. But you're supposed to be different. You're my mom, but you favor her too. I have never favored Emma over you. I insisted, though. A small voice inside questioned whether that was entirely true. I've always been proud of you, always supported you. Supporting me means making me the third parent in this house, while Emma gets to act like a child. Some support. The argument escalated, both of us bringing up past grievances, perceived slights, moments of favoritism I had never intended. Jason's words became sharper, more targeted, designed to hurt as he felt hurt. And I, exhausted and stressed, failed to be the adult in the situation. You know what, Mom? You're a terrible mother. You always have been. You're so caught up in your career and in making Emma happy that you don't even see what you're doing to me. I can't wait to leave for college and never have to deal with this family again. Those words, terrible mother, struck a nerve so deep I completely lost control. Years of sacrifice, of working myself to exhaustion, of trying my best to be both mother and father to my children, all dismissed in that casual, cruel teenage statement. Something inside me snapped. You want to know the truth, Jason? You were a mistake, a product of someone forcing himself on me. There were days I wished I had listened to my parents and aborted you. There are still days I regret keeping you, especially when you act like this ungrateful, selfish child. And yes, sometimes I do favor Emma because she doesn't make everything so difficult. I actually enjoy disciplining you more than her, because at least then you pay attention to what I say. The words poured out like poison, each one more devastating than the last. I couldn't stop them, couldn't take them back. They hung in the air between us, irretrievable and unforgivable. The moment they left my mouth, I wanted to die. The look on Jason's face will haunt me for the rest of my life. All the color drained away, leaving him ashen, his hands visibly trembling on the tabletop. His eyes, so like mine, widened in shock, and then shuddered, something vital and trusting, extinguished in an instant. He didn't yell back. He didn't cry. He simply stood up, gathered his books with mechanical precision, and walked to his room. The soft click of his door closing was somehow worse than if he had slammed it. The quiet finality of it said everything. I had broken something precious, beyond repair. The moment Jason's door closed, the full weight of what I had done crashed over me. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor, violent sobs racking my body. How could I have said those things? How could I have taken the most vulnerable, painful truths and weaponized them against my own child? I don't know how long I sat there before I managed to drag myself to Jason's door. I knocked gently at first, then with increasing desperation. Jason, please, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean any of it. Please open the door. Please talk to me. Silence. Honey, what I said was unforgivable. I was angry and exhausted, and I lashed out in the worst possible way. None of it was true. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Please, Jason, please just open the door. Nothing but silence from the other side. I pressed my ear against the wood, straining to hear any movement, any indication he was even listening. There was nothing. In desperation, I called David. Despite our divorce, he had remained a consistent presence in the children's lives, and Jason still respected him. Maybe he could help fix what I had broken. You did what? David's voice was ice cold when I explained what had happened. My God, Patricia. What were you thinking? You told him about the assault, that you wished you'd aborted him? Have you completely lost your mind? I know. I sobbed into the phone. I don't know what happened. I just snapped. Please, David, can you talk to him? He won't open his door, won't respond to me at all. And you're surprised by that, Jesus, Patricia. I'll try to call him, but don't expect miracles. Some things can't be unsaid. I waited by Jason's door as David tried calling. I could hear Jason's phone ringing inside the room, but he didn't answer. 3 calls went straight to voicemail before David texted me. He's not answering. I'll try again tomorrow. You really messed up this time, Patricia. As if I needed the reminder. Emma came home around 8, walking through the front door with a casual, "Sorry I'm late," until she saw me sitting in the hallway outside Jason's door, face swollen from crying. Mom, what's wrong? What happened? I couldn't bring myself to tell her everything, just that Jason and I had a terrible fight, and that I had said things I shouldn't have. Emma, usually so self-absorbed, showed a maturity I hadn't seen before. She made me tea, tried knocking on Jason's door herself, even slipped a note under his door. There was no response. That night was the longest of my life. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything but sit outside Jason's door, listening for any sound. Around 3 in the morning, I heard movement, the creak of his window opening. For one horrific moment, I thought he might be trying to sneak out, maybe even hurt himself, and I nearly broke down the door. But then I heard the window close again, and nothing more. Morning came, and I watched through bleary eyes as Jason's door finally opened. He was fully dressed, backpack over his shoulder, expression completely blank. He walked past me as if I weren't there, didn't respond to my tearful apologies, just walked straight out the front door and to the bus stop. I called in sick to work, unable to focus on anything but how to fix what I had broken. I called a family therapist my friend had recommended, scheduling an emergency consultation for that afternoon. I sent Jason texts throughout the day, each one more desperate than the last. I'm so sorry. Please talk to me. What I said was unforgivable. I didn't mean any of it. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I have never regretted having you not for 1 second. Please come home after school. We need to talk. No response to any of them. By the time school let out, my anxiety had reached unbearable levels. When Jason didn't come home, I started calling his friends. No one had seen him. I was about to call the police when Emma came home and said casually, "Oh, Jason's staying at Tyler's tonight. He said he needed space." The relief that he was safe quickly gave way to a new fear. Jason had never stayed at a friend's house without permission, without at least letting me know himself. The fact that he had communicated through Emma instead of directly with me showed just how completely he was cutting me out of his life. The family therapist I spoke with that afternoon was kind but direct. "You've caused a serious trauma," she explained. "Jason has just learned that the foundation of his existence, the story of his birth, is rooted in violence. And worse, He's been told by the person he trusts most that he was unwanted. That's going to take more than an apology to repair. What do I do? I asked, desperate for any guidance. Give him space right now, but make it clear you're available when he's ready to talk. Consider writing him a letter where you can carefully express your remorse without putting pressure on him to respond. And most importantly, when he does engage, listen more than you speak. Jason came home the next day after school, but continued to act as if I didn't exist. He would speak to Emma, would eat dinner if she was there, but would leave any room I entered. The silence was deafening, the gulf between us growing wider by the day. Through Emma, I learned that Jason had told her everything. I found her crying in her room one night, and when I asked what was wrong, she looked at me with such disappointment. How could you say those things to him? About him being a mistake? About wishing you'd aborted him? That's so messed up, Mom. Her words cut deep because they were true. It was messed up. I had no defense, no explanation that could justify what I had done. I know, sweetheart. I made a terrible mistake. I was angry and said the most hurtful things I could think of. None of it was true. But it was true, Emma insisted. I mean, about the assault. That really happened, right? So Jason really was. She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Jason was conceived in a violent way, I acknowledged carefully. But that has nothing to do with who he is or how much I love him. From the moment I knew I was pregnant, I chose him. Every day since I've chosen him. One moment of anger doesn't change 17 years of love. Emma wasn't convinced, and I couldn't blame her. Words have power, and the words I had hurled at Jason carried the weight of his very existence, his sense of belonging in our family, his understanding of my love for him. How could any child recover from learning that their mother had once considered ending their life? A full week passed, with Jason maintaining his wall of silence. He spoke to Emma, texted with friends, even talked with David on the phone, all within earshot of me, making it clear that his silence was specifically and solely for me. I continued trying. I left notes on his pillow, apologizing, explaining that nothing I said was true, that I loved him more than anything in the world. I made his favorite meals. I respected his space, but made sure he knew I was available whenever he wanted to talk. Nothing broke through the wall he had built. Emma was caught in the middle, trying to be loyal to both her brother and her mother. She would relay messages between us sometimes, but mostly she seemed overwhelmed by the tension in the house. More than once, I found her crying in her room, the weight of our broken family too heavy for her 15-year-old shoulders. Things escalated when I walked past Jason's room and noticed his laptop open to a website about teenage emancipation. My heart nearly stopped. Was he looking to legally separate himself from me? The thought was unbearable. That same day, Emma let slip that Jason had been in contact with my parents, asking questions about his biological father's family. This was another knife to my heart. I had never told Jason much about his biological father's family, a decision I'd made to protect him from more pain. They had wanted nothing to do with him when they learned of the pregnancy. Now Jason was seeking them out, looking for connections to replace the one he had severed with me. Jason's guidance counselor called to inform me that his grades were dropping dramatically. He had always been an A student, but now he was missing assignments and failing tests. When I tried to talk to him about it standing outside his locked door, pleading for just 5 minutes of conversation, he turned his music up louder to drown me out. The situation reached a breaking point when David became more actively involved. He had been keeping in touch with Jason regularly, and now he called to tell me that Jason had asked to move in with him. He can't live with you, I protested. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment. Where would he sleep? I'll get a pull-out couch, David replied. Or a bigger place. The point is, he needs space from you right now, Patricia. Maybe a lot of space. He's my son, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Yes, he is. And you destroyed his trust. Now you need to respect his needs, even if that means letting him go for a while. I agreed to a family dinner with David present, hoping we could discuss the situation calmly. It was the first time in over a week that Jason sat at the same table with me, though he still wouldn't look at me directly. The tension was palpable as we picked at the takeout David had brought. Finally, Jason spoke, addressing his words to David rather than me. I want to come live with you until graduation. I can't stay here anymore. Jason, please. I began, reaching for his hand across the table. He pulled away, as if my touch would burn him. I know what I said was terrible, unforgivable. But we can work through this. We can go to therapy together. Please don't leave. Jason finally looked at me, then his eyes cold and distant. You showed me who you really are. 5 words. Just 5 words, but they shattered what was left of my heart. That's not who I am, I insisted. I was angry and said things I didn't mean. You know me, Jason. You know how much I love you. Do I? He asked. Because I thought I knew you my whole life, and then you tell me I'm a mistake you wish you'd aborted. Which version am I supposed to believe? The version where I've loved you every day of your life. The version where having you was the best decision I ever made. I'm moving to Dad's, he said with finality, turning back to David. I already packed most of my stuff. My work suffered tremendously during this period. I missed appointments, failed to follow up with clients, couldn't focus on even basic tasks. My broker pulled me aside after I botched another listing presentation. Whatever's going on at home, Patricia, you need to get it sorted. Take some time off if you need to, but I can't have you losing listings like this. When the day came for Jason to move to David's, I lost all composure. As he carried his suitcase to the door, I physically blocked his path. Please don't do this. Please don't leave. We can fix this, Jason. I know we can. He looked at me with such coldness it froze my soul. You wanted me gone before I was even born. Now you're getting your wish. He pushed past me, walked out to David's waiting car, and didn't look back as they drove away. I collapsed right there in the doorway, sobs tearing through me with such force I thought I might break apart completely. Emma found me there an hour later, still crying, unable to move. For the first time since the argument, she put her arms around me and cried too. I hate this, she sobbed. I hate what's happening to our family. I held my daughter close, hating myself for what I had done to both my children. Emma hadn't just lost her brother to another household. She had lost her sense of security, her belief in the stability of our family, her trust in me as a mother who would never deliberately hurt her children. After Jason left, I took medical leave from work, finally acknowledging that I couldn't function professionally while my personal life was in shambles. My doctor referred me to a therapist specializing in family trauma, and I threw myself into the work of understanding how I could have said such terrible things to my son. In those early sessions, I had to confront truths I had buried for years. The sexual assault that led to Jason's conception had left deeper scars than I had ever admitted. Though I had gone to therapy briefly afterward, I had never fully processed the trauma, too busy trying to be a good mother, to build a career to create a normal life for my child. You've been carrying this weight for 18 years, my therapist observed. The assault, the pregnancy, the decision to keep the baby against your family's wishes, the struggle of single parenthood, and then divorce. That's a lot for anyone to bear. It doesn't excuse what I said to Jason, I insisted. No, it doesn't, But understanding why you were so vulnerable to an emotional outburst might help prevent it from happening again. And it might help Jason understand too when he's ready to listen. The hardest sessions were the ones where we discussed Jason's accusations of favoritism. I wanted to deny them completely, to insist I had always treated my children equally. But when I forced myself to look objectively at our family dynamics, I had to admit there was truth in what he had said. I had expected more from Jason because he was older, yes, but also because he had always been so capable, so responsible. I had leaned on him, especially after the divorce, in ways I never leaned on Emma. And perhaps I had been more lenient with Emma because she was more openly emotional, more likely to push back, while Jason internalized everything, rarely complaining, even when he had every right to. The truth is, I admitted to my therapist one day, Jason was right about some things. I did treat them differently, not because I loved one more than the other, but because they were so different as people. Jason never seemed to need as much from me, so I gave more attention to Emma's squeaky wheel. Have you ever told Jason that you recognize the truth in his perspective? I shook my head. He won't talk to me, won't read my notes, won't respond to texts. It's like I no longer exist for him. Then perhaps it's time to write him a longer letter. One that acknowledges his truth without making excuses for your behavior. One that takes full responsibility. With our house now eerily quiet, I found myself wandering into Jason's room when Emma was at school. I would sit on his bed, looking at the walls now stripped of posters, the desk cleared of his computer and books, the closet half empty of clothes. One day, I found a box of his childhood drawings in the back of his closet artwork from elementary school that he had deemed too childish to display, but too precious to throw away. I sat on his floor and went through them one by one, each crayon drawing and finger painting a reminder of the sweet, serious child he had been, the child I had wounded so deeply. David kept me updated on Jason's well-being, though the updates were minimal and clinical. He's eating, sleeping okay. Started seeing a therapist of his own. Still keeping up with school mostly. I clung to these crumbs of information, desperate to know how my son was doing, but respectful of his need for space. I wrote him the letter my therapist suggested, pouring my heart onto 10 pages of careful handwritten text. I acknowledged the truth in his accusations of favoritism. I explained the circumstances of his conception without using them as an excuse for my inexcusable words. I took full responsibility for the damage I had caused and promised to respect whatever boundaries he needed, while also assuring him that my love remained steadfast and unconditional. I dropped the letter off at David's apartment, not knowing if Jason would read it or throw it away, unread. David promised to give it to him, but warned me not to expect an immediate response, if any response at all. In therapy, I began to understand that my healing couldn't be contingent on Jason's forgiveness. I had to find a way forward that accepted the possibility that our relationship might never be the same, that the trust I had broken might never be fully restored. You need to work on forgiving yourself, my therapist advised, not to excuse what happened, but to prevent it from defining your entire relationship with Jason or with Emma. I joined a support group for parents estranged from their children. The stories shared there broke my heart, but also gave me hope. Some relationships had been repaired after years of separation. Others remained broken, but the parents had found ways to continue loving their children from afar, respecting boundaries while leaving the door open for reconciliation. I also sought out a support group specifically for mothers of children conceived through sexual assault. It was in this group that I found the deepest understanding, women who knew the complex emotions that came with looking at a child, and sometimes in certain angles of light or expressions, catching a glimpse of the person who had caused such trauma. Women who, like me, loved their children fiercely, while carrying their own unhealed wounds. The hardest part, one mother shared, is separating the act from the child. My daughter deserves to be loved completely, without reservation or shadow. But sometimes the shadows creep in, and I have to consciously push them away. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. I thought I had separated those things. I thought I had dealt with it all. But obviously I hadn't, or I never would have thrown it in his face like that. We all have moments where the past breaks through, another mother said gently. The question is, what we do afterward, how we repair the damage. I created a memory box at the suggestion of my therapist, filling it with photos of Jason growing up, his artwork, report cards, little notes he had written me over the years. It became both a record of our relationship and a promise to myself that we would add new memories someday, when and if Jason allowed me back into his life. 2 months after Jason moved out, I was still attending therapy twice weekly and support groups on weekends. Emma had adjusted to the new normal of splitting her time between homes, spending weekends with her father and brother, while living with me during the week. Our relationship had improved as I focused more intentionally on her needs, but there remained a wariness in her eyes, as if she were waiting for me to reveal some terrible truth about her existence too. My therapist suggested that family therapy might be beneficial if Jason would consider it. David agreed to broach the subject, but as expected, Jason refused. He says he's not ready, David reported. His therapist thinks it's best not to push right now. I accepted this with as much grace as I could muster. Though it broke my heart to be separated from my son, I knew that respecting his boundaries was the only path forward. I would not compound my betrayal by forcing my presence on him before he was ready. I continued to attend Jason's school events, sitting in the back of the auditorium during his debate competitions, watching from a distance as he excelled, despite the emotional turmoil of our family situation. I never approached him at these events, never tried to force an interaction. But I wanted him to know I was still there, still supporting him, still proud of everything he accomplished. A small breakthrough came unexpectedly one afternoon when I stopped at a coffee shop near David's apartment. I had just left Emma there for the weekend and decided to grab a latte before heading home to an empty house. As I waited for my drink, I turned and saw Jason standing in line. Our eyes met, and for a moment, I thought he would walk out. Instead, he simply turned away, continuing to wait for his order, as if I weren't there. It wasn't much, but the fact that he hadn't immediately fled felt like progress. I collected my drink and left without trying to speak to him, understanding that even this small tolerance of my presence was significant. For Jason's 18th birthday, I sent a gift card to his favorite bookstore through David, along with a brief note reiterating my love and pride in him. I didn't expect acknowledgement, so when David texted to say Jason had accepted the gift, my heart soared with hope. Emma began reporting small positive signs. Jason asked if you were feeling better, she mentioned casually one evening. I told him you were still seeing your therapist and seemed less sad. What did he say? I asked, trying not to sound too eager. Emma shrugged. Nothing really, just nodded. But he asked Mom. That's something, right? It was something. A tiny indication that despite everything, Jason still cared enough to ask about my well-being. I clung to that small sign like a lifeline. I continued my work in therapy, attended my support groups, and focused on becoming a better parent to both my children, whether Jason could see those changes or not. I took parenting classes focused on raising teenagers, learning better ways to communicate, to set boundaries, to navigate the difficult waters of adolescence. I was determined that when and if Jason gave me another chance, I would be a better mother than I had been before. A text message from Jason arrived 3 months after he had moved out. It was short and to the point. Do you still have that photo of us at the beach when I was 5? The one with the sandcastle. I stared at my phone in disbelief, reading the message over and over. After months of silence, this simple request felt monumental. I resisted the urge to respond with a flood of emotions, keeping my reply equally simple. "Yes, I have it. Would you like me to send it to you?" "Please," was his only response. I found the photo, scanned it, and sent it with a simple, "Here it is." No pressure, no expectations, just fulfilling his request with respect for the boundaries he had established. "Thanks," came the reply a few minutes later. Nothing more, but it was communication, and at this point, that felt like a miracle. Emma's 16th birthday arrived, bringing with it the awkward but necessary family gathering. David and I had agreed to put aside our differences to celebrate together, giving Emma at least one day where her family felt whole. Jason would be there, and for the first time in months, we would be in the same room by design rather than chance. I prepared carefully for the dinner, cooking all of Emma's favorite foods, decorating the house, wrapping her gifts with extra care. When Jason arrived with David, he gave me a slight nod of acknowledgement, the closest thing to a greeting I had received in months. I smiled in return, but didn't push, following his lead on how much interaction he could tolerate. The dinner was strained, but civil. Jason spoke when spoken to, participated in the birthday rituals, but maintained his emotional distance. Still, there were moments when I caught glimpses of the son I knew. A small laugh at one of Emma's jokes, the careful way he helped serve the cake, his thoughtful gift of concert tickets for a band Emma loved. The most unexpected moment came after dinner, when Emma and David were looking through old photo albums in the living room. I was clearing dishes in the kitchen when I overheard Emma complaining about my strictness regarding her curfew. "Mom's always been so much harder on me than on Jason," she grumbled. To my surprise, Jason's voice responded, "That's not true, Em. Mom was always stricter with me. You just didn't notice because you were younger." He was defending me. In a small way, but defending me nonetheless. I froze in the kitchen, hardly daring to breathe, afraid of breaking this fragile moment. "But she lets you do whatever you want," Emma argued. "No, she doesn't," Jason replied, his voice quiet but firm. "She had different rules for me, but they weren't easier. I had more responsibilities, too." I slipped away before they could notice me, listening, my heart both breaking and healing at once. Jason still wouldn't speak to me directly, still maintained his walls, but somewhere behind those walls, he remembered the truth of our relationship before that terrible day. He remembered that I had been a good mother, even if flawed, even if sometimes unfair. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't reconciliation, but it was a tiny thaw in the glacial distance between us. And for now, that was enough to nurture hope. 6 months passed since the day I spoke those unforgivable words to my son. 6 months of therapy, of support groups, of working on myself, of respecting Jason's boundaries while maintaining a steady, patient presence at the periphery of his life. 6 months of small, incremental steps towards something that might someday resemble healing. The most significant breakthrough came when Jason agreed to meet me for lunch, just the two of us. David had facilitated the arrangement, serving as intermediary as he had throughout these difficult months. The agreement came with strict parameters: 1 hour in a public place, with the understanding that Jason could leave at any time if he felt uncomfortable. I arrived at the cafe 20 minutes early, too nervous to sit still at home. I chose a quiet table in the corner, ordered tea I couldn't drink, and waited, heart-pounding, with equal measures of hope and fear. Jason arrived exactly on time, his expression guarded but not openly hostile as it once had been. "Hi," I said softly as he sat down across from me. "Thank you for coming." He nodded but said nothing, picking up the menu and studying it intently. I resisted the urge to fill the silence with nervous chatter, giving him the space to set the pace of our interaction. The conversation, when it finally began, was stilted and formal, focusing on safe topics like school, his college applications, the book he was currently reading. I listened more than I spoke, drinking in every word, every gesture, storing them like precious treasures after months of drought. Toward the end of the hour, I gathered my courage and asked, "Did you read my letter?" A long pause, then a single nod. "I meant every word, Jason, especially the parts where I acknowledged that you were right about some things. I did treat you and Emma differently, and that wasn't fair to you." He looked at me directly for the first time. "I know I had more responsibilities because I was older. That made sense. But sometimes it felt like Emma could do no wrong while I was never quite good enough." The honesty in his words cut deep, but I welcomed the pain. It was communication real and true after months of silence. "You're right," I admitted. "I expected more from you because you always seemed so capable, so mature. I leaned on you too much after the divorce. It wasn't fair, and I'm truly sorry for that." Jason looked down at his half-eaten sandwich. "The things you said that day, about how I was conceived, about wishing you'd aborted me, was any of that true?" My heart squeezed painfully in my chest. "The only true part was that you were conceived through sexual assault. That happened. But everything else was a lie born of anger. I have never, not for one single moment, regretted having you. You have been the greatest joy of my life, Jason. The decision to keep you was the best decision I ever made, and I would make it again in a heartbeat." He nodded slightly, absorbing my words. "I think I need more time." "Take all the time you need," I assured him. "I'm not going anywhere." That first lunch led to a standing monthly meeting. Each time the conversation flowed a little more easily, the silences became less awkward, the topics ventured beyond the superficial. Jason never fully relaxed, never returned to the easy comfort we had shared before. But slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding something new from the ashes of what I had destroyed. I learned not to push for forgiveness, but to earn it through consistent, respectful actions. I learned to listen to Jason's perspective without becoming defensive, to validate his feelings, even when they were painful to hear. I learned that some wounds leave permanent scars, but that relationships can still function, can still grow, even with those scars present. Emma thrived once the acute tension in our family subsided. Though she still split her time between two households, she no longer felt torn between her brother and her mother. She developed a closer relationship with Jason, finding in him a confidant and advisor as she navigated her own teenage challenges. My relationship with David improved as well, our co-parenting becoming more collaborative as we focused on what was best for both our children, rather than the grievances of our failed marriage. He acknowledged my efforts to change, to grow, to become a better parent, and I was grateful for his willingness to help facilitate my slow reconciliation with Jason. A breakthrough moment came 4 months into our monthly lunches. Jason called me late one evening, his voice tight with worry. "My car broke down on the highway. Dad's not answering his phone. Can you come get me?" I was in my car before the call ended, heart pounding, not with fear this time, but with a fierce protective love. My son needed me. After months of being shut out, he had reached for me in a moment of need. It was a small thing, a practical request, but it meant everything. When I arrived to find him waiting by his disabled car, the relief on his face was palpable. As we waited for the tow truck, we talked about mundane things, car maintenance, and school projects. But the simple fact of his willingness to be alone with me, to depend on me for help, felt like a gift beyond measure. Jason declined my invitation to move back home, a decision I accepted with understanding rather than hurt. He had established a life with David, had found stability in that arrangement. and was preparing to leave for college soon anyway. But he did agree to more frequent visits, Sunday dinners with Emma and me, occasional movie nights when our schedules aligned. Our relationship would never be the same as before. That carefree trust, that unquestioning bond, had been irreparably damaged by my cruel words. But something new was growing in its place. Something perhaps more honest, more intentional, built on the conscious choice to move forward despite the pain of the past. As Jason prepared for college, accepted to Columbia as he had worked so hard to achieve, I felt both proud and afraid. Would the distance heal or harm our fragile reconnection? Would he use college as an opportunity to cut ties completely? I expressed these fears in therapy, learning to sit with the uncertainty, to trust that the foundation we were rebuilding, however slowly, could withstand the separation. The thing about parenting, my therapist reminded me, is that our job is to raise children who can leave us. Success means they become independent, capable of building their own lives. But independence doesn't have to mean estrangement. I held on to those words as I helped Jason shop for dorm supplies, as I reviewed his packing list, as I prepared myself for the bittersweet milestone of sending my firstborn to college. The fact that he allowed me to participate in these preparations at all felt like a miracle after how close I had come to losing him completely. The journey of rebuilding trust with Jason taught me the most profound lessons of my life. I learned that love alone isn't enough, that good intentions don't erase harmful actions. I learned that true apologies require changed behavior, not just remorseful words. I learned that forgiveness isn't a single moment, but a process that unfolds slowly, sometimes incompletely over time. Most importantly, I learned that our worst moments don't have to define us if we have the courage to face them honestly, to take responsibility without excuses, and to do the hard work of becoming better than we were before. The words I spoke to Jason that day will always be part of our story, a dark chapter we cannot erase. But they are not the end of our story, nor its defining feature. Our relationship continues to heal, one conversation, one shared meal, one honest exchange at a time. It may never return to what it was before, but perhaps it can grow into something even stronger, something built on the hard-earned wisdom that comes only through falling, breaking, and finding the courage to begin again. I watch my son now, standing at the threshold of adulthood, and I am filled with awe at his resilience, his capacity for growth, his willingness to remain open to reconciliation, despite the deep hurt I caused him. In many ways, he has been the better teacher in this painful lesson, showing me through his careful, measured steps back toward relationship what true forgiveness looks like in action. The most valuable thing I've learned through this ordeal is that love isn't just a feeling, but a choice we make every day, even when it's difficult, even when the person we love has hurt us deeply. Jason is choosing slowly and cautiously to allow me back into his life, and I choose every day, without exception, to be worthy of that second chance. If you've ever said something unforgivable to someone you love, if you've ever wounded a relationship so deeply you feared it could never heal, I hope our story gives you hope. The path to reconciliation isn't quick or easy. It requires humility, patience, and a willingness to face painful truths about yourself. But it is possible to rebuild, to find a new way forward, to love again, even after the most devastating breaks. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever said something in anger you deeply regretted? Were you able to repair the relationship? I'd love to hear your stories. And if this resonated with you, please subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that. Even our worst mistakes don't have to be the end of our story. Thank you for listening.